Welcome to Artists at Work, Overwatch.
To understand gravity is to comprehend the shape of the universe and to hear the harmony that lies beneath. Let's begin the experiment. Sigma present. Barrier activated. Intriguing movement, but inconsequential. Let's continue the experiment.
Justice reigns from above.
Fascinating, but what goes up must come down. A pattern forms.
You can't catch me.
The data indicates... There! The experiment is almost concluded. Do you sense it? It's time for a prophetic flux. The universe sings to me! Listen closely to the harmony that binds all things. The universe is magnificent, isn't it?
Hello BlizzCon and hello Virtual Ticket and welcome to Artists at Work Overwatch. My name is Dylan Jones and I want to be your host today. I am the lead character technical artist on Overwatch. And why did we just show a Sigma video? The reason we just showed a Sigma video is today we're going to be showing you some behind the scenes of how Sigma was made and how some of his abilities were made. What we're going to do here is a little bit like a cooking show. So we're going to be condensing days, weeks, and sometimes months of work down into a 45-minute presentation. And as we're going along this journey, if you guys have any questions, we have people out in the audience to help answer those questions. So over here we have Kyle Rao, he is a senior character artist on the Overwatch team. Hell yeah, give him a round of applause.
Kyle.
And then over here we have Matt Lawrence, who is a senior character animator on the Overwatch team. Cool, so as you guys have questions about what we're showing or art-related questions, please come up and ask them, and we'll get you on the microphone. So one last note is, at the very end of this panel, we're going to have a sneak peek at some upcoming content. So stay tuned, and we'll show you what that looks like at the end. All right. What is your name, and what do you do?
Hey everybody, my name is Matt Taylor. I'm a senior character artist on the Overwatch team. I've worked at Blizzard a little over 8 years, and today I'm going to be taking you through the process that we use to make the character model for Sigma. So starting from a rough block out all the way to the final product that you see in game.
Very cool. Thank you, Matt. Hello. What is your name and what are you going to be showing us?
Hi, my name is Marcus Hammarstedt. I'm a senior animator on the Overwatch team. I've had the pleasure of working on the project for almost 2 years. I'm going to take you guys through how we created the first-person animation for Sigma's rock throw ability.
Cool. And so typically when you're done with an ability, who works on it next?
Next step is usually effect to tie it all together.
Only we had... Oh, over here.
Hello, BlizzCon and Virtual Ticket. I'm Greg. I'm a senior visual effects artist on the Overwatch team. And I've been happily working on Overwatch for the last year with these guys. Today I'm going to show you Sigma's primary attack, his hyperspheres. These dual explosions harness the awesome power of the black hole.
Very cool. So let's have a round of applause for our artist. Thank you. All right, cool. So let's get some art on these screens. Matt, what kind of software are you going to be starting with today?
Well, here, let me jump back here. I kind of skipped ahead a little bit. So whenever I'm starting a new character, I always kind of whip up a really quick block out, usually only spending like, a day or two on it. And its purpose is just to get something in the game as fast as possible, just to kind of let the animators and designers start playing around in game with it. Like for us, it's really important to get things in game as quickly as possible. So yeah, I'll work with this guy here. It's pretty simple. It doesn't look too much like our character, but it's enough to get the conversation started. And then I'm going to move on to what I call like an animation ready block out. that's going to be a little bit more detailed, and it's going to free up the animators to do their job while I spend time making the character. So I'll start that off. And I usually like to start that off in like a sculpting application because it's a little easier to figure out forms and shapes sculpting rather than doing it in Maya, moving pixels.
Very cool. How long do you generally spend in this part of the process?
Well, that first block out, like I said, usually takes like 1 to 2 days. This one can take, around 3 to 4 days. That can be spread out over multiple weeks, though, because like on our team, we're constantly collaborating and bouncing back and forth between concept and modeling and tech art. So, yeah.
Very cool. Thank you, Matt. All right, Marcus, what are we seeing on your screen?
So this is what a first-person rig looks like. This is how we as animators can control what you guys see on the first-person screen, like you see here, up here on the left. So I'm basically moving around all of these small curves here to basically control the character as a puppet. It's kind of weird looking since you can't see the body, but we just have the arms here that you see in first person. And I'm trying to block out the base poses, the basic idea for what the rock throw ability should look like and how it should feel.
Very cool. At this early roughen stage, when you're prototyping a new ability, what are some of the hardest challenges to overcome?
Usually it's getting everything conveyed on the screen in a short amount of time that feels good for gameplay, because we always think about gameplay first. So we want that instant response time when you push the button, but then still convey the fantasy of, in this case, grabbing rocks out of the ground and pushing it forward.
Very cool. And so, Greg, I'm seeing a bunch of weird stuff over here.
Yeah.
Tell me about what we have over here.
So a lot of times in game development, you have software, and sometimes there's errors, but now we're back in business. So what we're looking at here is this is what we call like a blockout effect, or the very beginning of Sigma's hyperspheres. And what we're looking for here is just timing and size. So the player needs to know where the effect takes place and where to either get out of the way or get closer to it if they're an ally. And so we start with something super simple, just basic geometric shapes, and we're just looking for readability, timing, and feel at this point in the process.
Very cool. So when you're doing that, who are the kinds of departments you're working with?
Luckily, as an effects artist, I get to work with almost everyone. You know, we work together a lot. I work with these guys. Because we're at the end, we basically get to put the icing on the cake, so to speak, and kind of pull everything together visually.
Very cool. So here at BlizzCon, this looks a little cramped. Can you tell me about that?
So usually my job, I get to have 3 monitors. So I'll have the game on this monitor on the far left, and then I'll have, this kind of window where I'm looking at the art, and then this window where I'm controlling all the curves and dials and buttons. And the reason we do that is because with game rendering, it's most important, how is it going to look in game? So on that 3rd monitor, I'll just have the game running and just have the ability going over and over.
Cool. So having the game, a whole monitor dedicated to the game.
Yes.
Sounds
so
like
nice.
a big win.
It's
Very
huge.
cool. So big takeaway there. Greg has 3 monitors, everyone. Blizzard.com/careers.
Lucky guy.
So over here, Matt, whoa, okay, that's changed a lot.
Yeah, we're just playing over here in kind of like a digital clay. He's still a little weird looking, but I'm going to just continue refining the shapes and just trying to make it look a little bit more like our character here.
This looks really fun. Tell us a little bit about the software and how you learned it.
Yeah, this is Mudbox. Or you can use this or ZBrush. They're both 3D sculpting applications where you're pretty much using, like I said, like digital clay. Here, I don't really have to worry too much about like some of the more technical aspects of modeling. I'm able to just strictly focus on the art. It's a cool step. It's fun.
Very cool. And just a reminder, if you guys have any questions about what you're seeing on the screen, just come up and ask. All right, cool. We'll come back to you, Matt.
Cool.
It's looking pretty cool, though. All right, so what are the next steps for you, Marcus?
So I'm just still trying to roughly block in all of the poses here. And fairly early on, we try to get this into the game for playtesting so everyone can try it out. And usually there's a lot of collaboration between all the departments to see that this kind of fulfills the fantasy that we're targeting and also feels good for gameplay when you play it. So usually we tie in like all the different departments, but I work especially a lot with programmers, engineers, and designers to make sure everything is working as intended.
Very cool. And then, Greg, things are looking a little different already over here.
So
a much cooler effect.
Now that we know the size and the timing and we know what design needs to happen with this explosion, we're going to actually start to find what I call like the hero element or the key element. And so thinking about the hyperspheres, it's the power of the black holes. We knew we wanted an energetic explosion that was outward, but also the gravity's so strong that all of that energy collapses back in on itself. So this is my hero element, and this sphere has a texture mapped onto the sphere, and the texture looks like this. It's a 128 by 128, and I did almost all of Sigma's effects with this single texture, so I called it the star line, because it's the star of the show. And it basically works if you could think of like a barber pole, where you see it just kind of endlessly spinning. It's kind of that same thing where the texture's mapped on the sphere in a way that it makes this swirl take place.
Very cool. So over here in the middle, Marcus, what is this weird line thing you're playing with?
So this is what we call the graph editor. And basically all of these dots here are my different poses that I have set on the character. And in between, you have the lines that basically control the motion between the poses. So if I actually manipulate this, you can see stuff moving there on the screen, and that is just controlling the interpolation between the different poses. So this is how I can control the motion over time.
Very cool. And so now, over here just a second ago, I was seeing the same thing on your monitor, Greg. How do you use those curves?
So the curves in this tool are really good, and we use them in a lot of different ways. There's some really interesting ones, though, and I think I want to show you one of the ones that's slightly more complex. So on this particular element, this hero element I was showing you earlier, we have this really cool thing that's a Fresnel fall-off curve. And this curve says that, let me make this a little bigger. I can't hardly see it. Wait for it. So this curve says anything on this side of the curve is the normals pointing away from the camera. So if you imagine the sphere, think of like a golf ball. Every little faucet is like a normal, or the way that it's facing out from the sphere. And this says any normal that's facing away, draw less transparent. So its opacity is going to be 0 if it's facing away. And this side of the curve says anything that's facing directly towards the camera, draw with full opacity. So if we change this to a 1, what will happen is in game you'll see a harder, darker, bolder edge on this element, because the normals that are now facing away from the camera are drawing a lot darker than they were. And if we undo it, you'll see that it becomes, if you give it a second update, it's much more blended and softer and smooth. So that's one of the ways we can take a simple object like a sphere and to create the illusion of like energy or depth.
It's really cool how you're able to use the same stuff over and over again and get different looks. That's really cool. It looks like we have a question from the audience.
Hi, name's Aki. Matt, when it comes to characters, well, since Sigma doesn't have hair, what is the approach that the Blizzard team takes when sculpting hair?
Yeah. Yeah, with hair, we're always kind of thinking about it like we're kind of sculpting fire. We're always looking for those like S, like Bezier curves, and trying to have everything end in triangles. Yeah, I guess we it's man, I don't know what else there's really to it.
Is it one strand at a time, or is it like big chunks?
It is big. I mean, there's sort of like little rules. We try not to have lines cross all the way across a shape, and just kind of always trying to chase those S curves. I don't know. Yeah. We can chat more about it after. I'll think a little more on this.
Cool. Thank you very much. So Matt, your sculpt, your digital clay has come a long way.
Yeah. I think actually now's a good time too to like jump ahead a bit. Usually this part will take me like a day or so, and we'll just pretend we'll time travel a little bit. So I'll usually take it to like this point here, and then move on. From a distance, it's kind of starting to look a little bit closer to what our character is going to look like.
So Matt, is this the part of the cooking show where we put the bread in the oven and we cut to the more finished loaf of bread?
Exactly.
All right,
exactly
perfect.
right. Yeah. And so from here, I'm going to use this as a guide to make that animation block out that I talked about earlier. So here we go from our quick proxy model that took us a day to make. We do our rough block out that's like crazy, and we kind of end up with something like this, the animation ready block out that the animators can start playing around with in game.
That is very cool. Thank you, Matt. We have another question from the audience.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Bruno. I was gonna ask either animation and effects, like how balance patches affect animation. So for example, I know like they removed Sigma's like cast time for the shield, or like McCree shooting like faster. Does that affect your job?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
Let's start with Greg, and then Marcus can add afterwards.
Most definitely. We have to be really on top of that stuff, and the only way to really know is for us as the visual effects department to get in there and play the abilities. Luckily, we have some great people on the team that are really much better at Overwatch than I am, and they can catch these things. And it mostly comes down to like changing for timing. Anytime something's timing changes, we'll have to adjust. Like you can see here, this timeline, like this light plays for this many frames. So let me pause this. Up until frame 15, this light plays. Well, if that ability gets cut short to 10, we want that light to get out of there. So we'll just go in and make simple adjustments. And everything's set up in a way that you can adjust it on the fly. What's even better, if we have the foresight, we can actually use data to say this time of this whole timeline is driven by design. So they can plug in and say like, basically this becomes 0 to 1 for design. And then if they make adjustments, this stuff would just scale and change accordingly. But we don't always catch the things that are gonna change, so sometimes we have to go back.
That is very cool. Marcus, do you have anything you would like to add for that question?
Yeah, it's interesting that you noticed the cast time for Sigma, because we did work quite a bit on adapting the gameplay for that cast time, and then vice versa. We have to put in quite a bit of work to make similar animations work for a new timing, and that happens whenever there's a big balance change like that. But it's something we communicate about all the time on the team, and I feel like everyone is very, very good about making sure that we can deliver the patches in the best shape possible to make the proper adjustments to make it work. But there are adjustments to be made for sure to make sure everything still works as intended and looks as intended.
Design changes keep our jobs exciting. Kyle, you have some more questions over here.
Hi there. I was just wondering what your process was like when you start a new skin. Do you sort of start from like a template and go from there? And what is that process like?
Well, since you're interested in that, I highly recommend you stick around till the sneak peek of upcoming content. But that being said, that involves everyone over here. So let's just start with Matt and come on down.
Yeah, so when I'm starting on a new skin, I'm always looking for like, I want to make sure that it's going to work for animation, right? Like, I'm looking for areas where I know there's going to be a lot of deformation, where I'm trying to look for as many problems I can see in the future. I mean, at some point, I'll have to do a really quick, like, rough block out and get into the game and just see if it's going to work or not. Sometimes we'll, like, I kind of have a feeling that's not going to work, but we still just want to go ahead and try it. So that's what I always have in mind for skins.
One of the things, too, if I could add to that, Matt, like one of the things that's so important to the Overwatch team is the read in game, and the silhouette of the character has to have that kind of maintain its general silhouette. And then for ideation, a lot of times, too, the concept team will even just send out an email just to the whole team and be like, hey, do you guys have any cool skin ideas? And sometimes just listing those words gets the concept artist going.
Yeah, it's definitely the quick read has to still read as the same hero.
We also mirror a lot of the same workflow. So right now you're seeing Matt start with like a block out, go to a more refined block out, and then a final asset. We'll do the same thing with skins too and make sure we really like the idea. And in an ideal world, Marcus over here doesn't really have to do much for a skin, but unfortunately sometimes he does. So Marcus, what's an example of something that would require you to work on a skin?
You could also call it fortunately, because for example, one good example would be if anyone has seen the dramatic victory, what's it called, play of the game for Wrecking Ball. If he has the skin with the glasses falls off. And that was an adjustment we made specifically for that skin. So that was an opportunity to make something a bit more enjoyable for a specific skin. We have a couple of other examples, but that one is probably the example that pops into my head the most. So sometimes there are good opportunities.
Yeah, it does. We get opportunities as well, because like Sigma's base skin, it's a subtle effect, but if you move him close to a wall, you'll see his head is bright enough, almost like mine. They will reflect light out into the world around him. And so a lot of skins will go in and we have an ability to override per skin and say like, okay, for this skin, we don't want this light, but maybe we want something else.
That's pretty cool. Matt has a question over here.
How you doing? So my question is what is the job of the modelers in terms of like when older machines try to play games like Overwatch? how does the modeler or whoever is rigging the characters lower that poly count so that players are able to play the game at least a higher frame rate or something like that?
Cool. I think Greg should take that. No, just kidding. Matt, come on over.
Like, whoa, yeah. Yeah, totally.
I got you.
Yeah.
I got you.
Totally, yeah. So yeah, it's really important to us that the game runs well. So we make like 4 different levels of detail. So like, we'll start off, our first mesh will be like 45,000 triangles, right? And then we're gonna cut down to half of that, and then half of that, and then half of that, and so on. So that and on like lower settings, we might start from not that 45,000 triangle mesh. We might start from the like 30,000 triangle mesh or something, right? So.
Cool. It's a great question. But yeah, it's something
Yeah.
to think about. And actually, one thing that people might not know is that actually affects VFX art too, where they make, for different platforms, they make different qualities of VFX. So, Greg, you want to
Yeah,
talk
I
about
can show you real quick right here, Dylan.
I didn't know that.
It's really neat. Like some of these, like we have lights on effects. So if we go to this properties panel, you can see that this explosion light, which is like a real-time light that happens for each explosion, we just, once the machine's under what we call medium quality, we just turn that light off. And then all the way up to ultra, we'll keep that light on. So if you have the machine and to run it and you're not like playing at the Overwatch League, it's nice to run with better graphics because it looks pretty.
Very cool. We're going to get right back to questions, but I'm just noticing Marcus has the game up. So this seems really important. So let's come and see what Marcus is doing over here.
So this is basically kind of a polished first pass. We usually get things into the game earlier than this, but for the sake of this example, this is what all the work that I did previously, all the base poses are here. But you can see the motion is kind of linear, and there's not a lot of motion going on in between the poses. But it works for what it's intended to do when we do gameplay testing with the team. And what I did over here, this is our tool called TED. This is the game engine, essentially, and this is the tool that we, as animators, have to hook up animations in the game. So basically, this is the entire performance of Sigma's first-person movement set. So you see we have the shield cast is here, all of these different nodes trigger different animations and different behaviors. This is his ultimate. And over here, I just hooked up the animations for his rock throw, and the result that we get is something like this. And then things like the hyperspheres and the rock are handled by different separate systems.
So that thing you were just showing in TED, what are all those squares and lines?
This is basically our test bed for testing things.
Sorry, back in TED.
Oh, back in TED, sorry.
What are all these like blue squares and gray squares and the lines going between them?
All of these things are nodes that trigger animations or performances. So here I've hooked up the actual rock throw intro animation, and then we have a loop that is for latency. If you have high latency, he actually holds the rock until the server is ready to receive the rock. And then we're here in this node, we're triggering the outro, the finishing animation.
Very cool. So you as the animator have the ability to connect your own animations to the game?
Correct, and we also tweak blend times and transition animations and different things like that.
Seems nice. All right, cool. Over here.
Hi, I was just curious if you guys work at, this is for Marcus, if you work at like a stock frame rate, because I know we all play at like, 144 hertz or 60 hertz, or like how does that work?
So we have high refresh rate monitors, so I usually test all of the animations on both. We animate in 30 FPS per second for the animation content, but then I always test my stuff in 144 hertz and in 60 hertz to make sure it works for both, because you can find specific bugs that you can't see on certain monitors.
Yeah, so as a follow-up then, do you see like any loss in fidelity of some of your animations as you upscale from 30 hertz to 144?
Sometimes, it feels smoother, but usually I feel like it almost increases fidelity because it just feels smoother and less laggy, I guess, if that makes sense.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you for the question. Over here.
So I know most Blizzard games are hand-painted textures. I wanted to know how you guys handle using normal maps, as it's probably not traditional.
Cool, that's a fantastic question. I'm going to send that over here to Matt.
That's like perfect timing, yeah. So I'll, just like with other games, right? I'll make a high poly like detail mesh, and then that has a lot more information. It's probably like 20 million polygons, and I transfer that detail down to the in-game mesh, and that includes baking a normal map. Yeah, that's kind of, you just bake the normal map, it reads that information, and the model will actually appear more detailed than it really is. And I'll show you that later on.
Cool. Yeah. We'll get back to questions in just a second. Matt, I've noticed you changed entirely what you're doing over here.
Yeah, so I've just been kind of playing with colors over here. just trying to get it to look a little bit closer. So maybe if you saw this character from like 20 feet away, you'd start to feel like, start to get a pretty good idea of what the final model's gonna look like. So I'm gonna jump ahead again, actually, and show you kind of like where I'd end up with this block out. It's kind of like, it's still a little sloppy, but from a distance, right, it's gonna read as Sigma. But
that was pretty cool. What is this very colorful software called?
This is called 3D Coat. It's a really cool, it does all kinds of things, but it's really cool for doing 3D painting on.
Cool. And so you just went from rough to a better looking one. How long does that usually take?
Well, from that rough blockout, that was like, what, a day or two? And then this whole animation-ready blockout takes usually like 3 to 4 days.
Cool.
But like I said, that could be spread out because we like collaborate so much, right? So
yeah. And sometimes we change. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we change.
Over here, we have some more questions.
Hi there. I've been studying graphic design in my current education, and I've been observing in a lot of listings that a lot of times there's 3D modeling required in my particular role. So my question for you guys is how often do you guys go from your specialized roles, whether it be visual effects or modeling, do you transition or practice even other roles in the 3D modeling game community and whatnot?
So Matt actively practices another role sometimes. He primarily is a very talented character artist. But Matt, what are some of the other things you do for us?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of like to think of myself as like a T-shaped developer, where like I have a base understanding of a lot of disciplines, and then I dive deep on character art, right? So for me, one of the things I've been getting into on the side is like scripting. So I do a lot of like Python scripting, there's a lot of tools up on the top of my screen here. I make a lot of those little scripts just to like make my work easier. Like if I ever find myself doing something a lot, I'm like, man, I should make a tool for this. Like, 'cause I want to work smart, not hard, right? So. Yeah.
And some people, they also, their day-to-day work deals with lots of different departments. That's actually what I do. I deal with character art, animation, and effects every day.
Yeah, Dylan usually has a huge line of people at his desk because they all need help.
Yeah.
It's fun. Over here, we have some more questions.
I wanted to ask, what software are each of you using?
That is a great question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, right now I'm using Maya. Yeah.
Cool. And then Marcus, what do you animate in?
I'm working in Maya as well. That's our main animation software on Overwatch.
And then Greg, what do you work in currently? And let's say you had to do something at home to like prototype, what would you work in?
So right now I'm using our proprietary software, which is our in-game engine software called TED. It would be very sad if I couldn't use TED at this point because it's such a great, amazing tool. I have vendor mode right now, which is, it's a little more like with the training wheels on, so I don't have access to everything that I did. If I was doing something at home, like in times when I've had to work on a reel, you can download Unreal, and that's a pretty good package for getting some effects and getting results.
Very cool. Thank you very much. So it sounded like Maya, and TED, which is our software. So then Unreal if you want to try some stuff at home. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Greg, while we were just chatting over here, things were looking radically different over here.
Yeah, so what I wanted to show you guys is something interesting about Overwatch is at Blizzard, we're all about gameplay first, and we really want people to understand what's happening. And with a 6v6 competitive fighter, it gets a little bit nutty sometimes. So what we do is we break everything out, and we'll do all the effects, and we'll recolor them so that they have like a warmer, what do we call like our hostile hues and tones and colors. And so we can just see from these color remaps, if I can find them.
Oh look, it's that same texture again.
You can see these curves are defining these colors to draw into this effect, where on the other one, we use the Sigma's colors. It's just kind of a nice thing that's interesting. And then this same type of technology, it's a little bit different, but it's along the same lines of using these curves to remap colors. So this right side of the curve where this key is says anything that's white or 100% value white, draw white, and anything here, draw dark blue. It's like dark values, and that's how we do the Overwatch League coloring. So when you see your favorite team playing, and they all have their different colors that match their teams, it's similar to these types of ramps that we use.
Very cool. We have another question over here.
I had a question for Matt regarding where does the two-dimensional design concept start? Like typically would have been old ink and paper, early stage. Like it seems like you're inventing from nothing right in 3D to begin with. Is there still an early character design role, or is it only already 3D?
Oh yeah, no way. I actually, on the other monitor, I have a concept, so I'm totally following the guide here. Yeah, so concept artists will usually start with a bunch of thumbnails, and then sometimes even give me like a loose sketch, and we'll just like, hey, they aren't sure if something's gonna work in 3D, and we'll kind of play back and forth, and they'll do paint overs. So it's a really collaborative process, even from the very beginning. But actually, Q Fang, one of our concept artists, drew this for me, and yeah, we bounced back a lot before he got to this like kind of final, nice, refined concept. But we were so fortunate to have like really nice concepts to work from the whole time, because if I had to come up with that stuff while I'm making it in 3D, it would take me so much longer.
And
so yeah,
really
we definitely
helped
use
us with
2D
Sigma,
concept artists.
If I could get in there, Matt, because what happened when we were developing it, the whole character team, everyone involved, like gets together like twice a week and plays the character. And early on, even with that concept and Matt's rough block out, one of the things we noticed is that we wanted Sigma to have a very tank-like presence. And when you're up against characters like Roadhog and Diva and Reinhardt, they're just tanky, not unlike Kyle is. And so you could see that we needed Sigma to have this big presence on the field, and that really helped inform Q at the concept level that then Matt was able to translate into 3D.
All right, cool. And do we have another question back here? Thank you for your question.
Hi there, name's Abby. I'm noticing Sigma's beautiful like finger motions here, and I had a really I don't know about if y'all do motion capture or gesture study about the movement, because I know each of the characters have specific ways, because all different people move different ways, and how y'all go about that.
So yeah, thank you for noticing. We do a lot of studies for each character. We do a lot of reference gathering, and we also record our own references when we want to find certain motions. But on Overwatch, we don't utilize motion capture. It's a tool that you can use, definitely, but for the style that we're trying to achieve, hand keying animation is achieving the style that we're trying to achieve. But we definitely do a lot of posing, studying, and reference studying, and gathering of references in general.
What about the smear? The smear.
Oh yeah. Greg here mentioned like we do a lot of smear stuff too, which is like a trick that we use to kind of increase the feeling of motion. You can see here, never look at a first-person animation from a different angle, but you can kind of see here that it looks super wonky.
Stretching my poor models.
But it's something increase the feeling of snappy, quick motion here when he removes the hand from screen. You can also kind of see it when he fires away the rocket with his right arm here. It's really long and kind of strange looking.
Oh, wow.
Breaks up, but from here, it looks fine.
Mine doesn't do that. Yeah, it's really cool. What's cool is like when you're playing it, you don't really see it so much as to feel it. You know, the animations feel like they have a lot of weight and stuff. It's a pretty cool effect. So what part of the process are you in right now if you're adding smear frames?
This is basically at the end of the process. What I'm doing right now, I have the rock animated like this, and then we've added a bunch of smear frames and different details to how the fingers behave and move. At this point, there aren't a lot of changes, unless there's a big balance update or something like that. But now I'm adding camera animation and then different kind of shake animations on top to tie it all together with emphasizing the action that is happening on screen.
Very cool.
One interesting thing I wanted to show you guys, Dylan, is as effects artists, we have a lot of characters on the screen at once, and effects by nature are expensive to render, because when you're rendering particles, there's a lot of transparency. So even though our art is very much condensed and what looks like is painted is here, if you look at the actual particles, this is the quads and the shapes of transparency that get rendered. So all this space out here, we're still paying for that. So this is actually a pretty affordable effect, except maybe right here in the center, it gets very bright. But since it's such a small thing, that's not such a huge consideration. So it's just one thing that we're always keeping an eye on and we're always looking at. And it's neat that we have a tool that can show us this immediately and get kind of that immediate feedback on it.
That's very cool. So something I notice is when I look at effects online, I notice a lot of effects when they're being made, they're rendered on like a black or a white background. What's
Yeah.
the reason you work with a gray background?
So the reason I like to use like these grays, in Overwatch there'll be areas of shadow and areas of brightness, and you want to make sure your effects read well in both. If you want to impress your friends, like always show effects on black. They just pop. It looks really good. I mostly work in London because it's just everything looks great there. But if you're going to apply, get it on 50% gray because we all know that trick.
Cool, that's a good
Yeah.
pro tip. Let's start over here with the questions. All right.
I had a question for Matt. When you were working on like that silver bolt thing that he has up there on the top, you kind of made like this floating piece of geometry on the sides of it. Is it like I was kind of curious, like what is the thought process for that?
Yeah. So I don't know how much you know about 3D modeling, but or like the process of like making normal maps, right? But all this information is actually just going to end up in those textures. So I'm doing a little trick here because you can imagine when I transfer that detail, there's going to be a little camera that takes a picture from right here, and it's not going to see that. It's not going to see it from this angle where like, oh yeah, it's not really meshed in there. It's just, we call it floaters. So it ends up being really cool because like if like my lead or something's like, hey Matt, you need to change this, or we don't want it there, I can just hide it and it's gone, or I can like move it really easily. Whereas if it was meshed in there, it would just be a big pain to do that. I know for like pre-rendered stuff that they actually do have to go through the trouble of meshing it in. It's just one of those little tricks that we as like game artists can take advantage of to speed things up. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
It's a pretty cool trick. That's one of the coolest things I learned on the Overwatch team working with the character artists. Kyle, we have a question over here.
Yes, hello. Thank you for all you do. We really appreciate it.
Thank
as
you for
gamers.
coming. We appreciate you too.
They introduced Overwatch 2, and it has a very different look. It looks really good, maybe darker. Maybe you can talk about how you did that.
I think Matt is the most fit to answer that one.
So I can speak specifically to like the characters. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to say.
Actually, maybe we'll plug something else later. So later today, there's an in-depth panel of what is new with the Overwatch art style and the Overwatch technology. So that's actually a perfect plug. So yeah, I would check that out later today. Didn't you guys know when that is?
A lot of stuff has changed though. It's going to be really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, later today, Arn, our assistant art director, and Billy, our art director, are going to go over all of the new stuff. So if you have time, check that out. You'll get all the answers. Thank you for the question. All right, over here.
Hi, I was wondering, when you're creating a new character, you usually get the concept art, but how much information or direction are you given when you're creating the effects for that character?
Oh, that's a great question. So fortunately, I'm so blessed to be part of the Overwatch team because we're all about collaboration, and I couldn't have done this on my own. So I'll play with things, and then I'll elicit feedback from, the rest of the team. I kind of was so excited about Sigma because I played Orisa, and then I played Reinhardt, and so by the time we got to building Sigma, I really felt like I was building my main, which is my main now. So I just jumped in there early, and I was like, I want to define how gravity looks because no one can tell me because you can't see it. And so I started with these orbital shapes, and what I did is I just kept playing and with stuff like this, basically. So like, how can I define shape with orbits? And I was doing a lot of stuff like this, but what I found is like, it's kind of noisy. It's high frequency. It's too much motion. It's just an explosion. Let it be an explosion. So by paring that down to just a simple, clean, still getting that feeling of energy and an electron like pulling around gravity, that's how I was able to kind of define this primary explosion. So usually there's a lot of iteration, a lot of back and forth, a lot of collaboration, and I get addicted to that. I'm encouraged that. That's the way you get better as an artist. But in this case, I was able to kind of land on this look and then take it to the rest of his kit. Thank you. Good question.
It's a great question. Thank you. Another cool thing about the Overwatch team is every artist sees the concept, so we all have a chance to give feedback if we're going to be working.
Yeah, and I should mention like Billy, the art director, and Arn, the assistant art director. They'll come by my desk and they'll collaborate with me and they'll look at stuff and there's reviews. Like everyone's involved to get to the final look.
Cool. This will be our last question over here.
On the floor.
You're on the floor.
Oh no.
UV maps.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. How many UV maps are usually on a character like that as well?
Great question. Matt?
Yeah, sometimes it could be 3 or 4. A lot of times we'll use tricks to get the most out of like a texture, right? Like on a missive, for instance. Sometimes on a character, if you only have one glowy thing on it or a couple glowy things, you'll end up with this huge black texture with just a couple bright spots on it. So I'm able to use those other UV sets to be more optimal. But yeah, sometimes 3 or 4, just depends.
Cool. Yeah, you can ask a follow-up.
Yeah.
Does it take a lot of cleanup for your gnome maps as well, or is it pretty straightforward? Or
I mean, just over the years, I've kind of gotten a little bit better about my practices of baking normal maps. There are some times where I'm just like, it's not going to be worth it to go back and fix it in 3D. I'll just, fix it in Photoshop or something. Yeah, sometimes.
Matt, have you ever gotten a perfect bake?
Once. Yeah, maybe once. Yeah.
It can happen. Believe.
Yeah.
All right, so
Inside
now we
joke.
are at the last stage of the process. So I want to make sure everyone has a chance to show kind of the finalizing steps that they're working on. So Matt, what are we looking at over here?
So I jumped ahead again. I'm actually, I don't know if you were watching me before, I was working on a lot of the hard surface bits. So by that I mean like the metals, the plastics, all those things, and kind of ignoring the folds. So now I'm kind of jumping into sculpting some of these folds.
Very cool. And so, Marcus, I'm noticing you've kind of moved off of the character and you're working on a new element now.
Yeah, so right now I'm putting the finishes touches on the camera, as I mentioned before, to kind of tie it all together. And after we put all of this into the game in our tool that I showed earlier, in here with all the nodes and everything, the actual final result looks something like this. This is all of the rock throw logic. There are a lot of different small bits of animation playing here on top of each other, and it's kind of stacked. And then there's another network for just the rock itself that is equally complicated. And in the end, in the game, it looks something like this before Greg has had his hands on it. So this is without effects other than the rock, which is actually like another model.
What are what's like a rule or a challenge you face when you're finalizing this?
Usually it's just tying it all together so it blends in and out of all the other performances that a character does. Since you can jump while you do this, you can look around while you do this, so we want everything on the screen to react like it does normally when you're not doing anything. So getting all of this to kind of play nicely together, and so you can interrupt it at any time, but also go back to any performance or animation at any time. That always takes a lot of time to get that final like 10%.
Very cool. And so now, Greg, you've made sure it's got performance. You've got team colors.
If I
What's
could
left?
speak to that real quick, if Marcus could pull up the video of the one with effects. Like, this was so awesome to collaborate with Marcus because we had struggled for so long to feel the fantasy of this rock pulling together. We had tried like mesh rocks and cyclones and all kinds of effects. We just kept throwing more effects at it to see if we could get the rocks to come together. And it really wasn't until Marcus did this beautiful forming of the rocks that I was able to like add a light to the middle and then have the swirling energy move around, which again is the starline texture, just used again to make that rock create. And then, you add the impact, you throw a couple lights on there, and it's so fun. You gotta use this point blank on somebody. It's just the best feeling in the world.
What I really like about this too is how it feels like it's a part of his kit, like his hyperspheres and the rock. It all feels like it comes from the same place.
Yes.
It's a cohesive kind of ability.
Yeah, we're always looking for that, Dylan. We always want that unification of a kit and like that signature, that the animation, the effects, everything about the character is an extension of who the character is.
Sounds like it's a very collaborative effort.
Yes, it is.
All right, cool. So Matt, we're about to wrap up. Do you have any final notes that you would like to send the audience off with?
Yeah, let me just show you the final model before we get out of here. I think I got that. Let me open that up real quick.
So Matt is opening the final model so we can see the results. Sometimes these files are very heavy. They take a little while to open.
So we can see this is actually like, well, you probably can't see it down there. This is like 4 million triangles, so definitely wouldn't run in game. That's why we do all those tricks to transfer the detail into the game. But still having it be performant so it runs on any machine.
Is that it? Is it open?
Yeah, this is the final high-res model. This is kind of where I'd end up with on an Overwatch character.
That is very cool. A lot of detail.
Yeah.
Greg, do you have any parting notes for us?
Yeah, so now that everything's done, we got the friendly, the hostile. The blockout period, I should have mentioned, can take a lot longer than once you get to do the final art. You want to keep things kind of loose because there's going to be changes. And sometimes it'll just be like sweeping ability changes. And they'll be like, now he has a flamethrower. So you don't know. You don't want to drive in too deep on that. But once you get it all done, we have a refractive pass we can do. If I slow this down a little bit, you might be able to see it a little better. And something like this is very subtle, but if you look right around here, there's kind of this warbly, kind of watery refraction. I really wanted to show you all on a map, but my map has gone missing. I can't find it. And then also you add like a point light, and a light will help ground the effect and kind of unify things together and make your effects really feel like they exist in the space around them.
Awesome, thank you. And Marcus, final thoughts?
Yeah, thank you all for coming. Hope you enjoyed the presentation. We're all going to be over at the meet and greet area after this. So if you have more questions or just want to hang out, please come and talk to us. We'd love to say hi.
Cool, so we are out of time, but one thing we do when we're done, we finish the model, the animation, the VFX, it's time to start working on skins. And that is something we're going to continue doing for the Overwatch game. We're going to continue creating content for you guys. And I am pleased to announce that we have a sneak peek of some upcoming content. Play the video. So what this is this is a skin for Sigma, the character we've been showing all day. And it's for our upcoming winter event. Cool, all right. So this is a team effort, many people on Blizzard, much more people than what you see on stage. But yeah, we're going to continue making cool content because we love it. It's fun, and we like to play with the cool new skins. Cool. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Happy BlizzCon.